Hey there. My name is Jonathan Page. I'm the pastor at Herndon United Methodist Church, and I want to welcome you to today's Real Talk. This is typically a space that our Director of Congregational Care and Discipleship, Scott Bach Hansen, hosts to update us on things that are happening in and around the life of the church. Scott's away at licensing school this week, which is a training event for him as he prepares to become our associate pastor as of July 1st, and we're certainly praying for him in that space. And we actually had something else planned for this today, and you'll get to see that next week. Today, I want to come to you as your pastor because there have been tragic events that have unfolded in our country over the last 24 hours. I'm filming this on Wednesday morning. Yesterday, there was a shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that took the lives of 19 school children, 2 teachers, and there may be others who are hospitalized or injured. You know, one of the things I remember very vividly was as a freshman in high school, seeing the Columbine High School shooting and thinking very fearfully about what that could mean for me as a high school student at that time that I believe took place 22 years ago. And moment after moment, day after day, it feels like there is the continuation of violence in our world. We see this happening in the war in Ukraine right now. We see this happening with some of the conflict that's happening in North Korea and in other parts of the world that sometimes don't make the news. And those global conflicts are certainly concerning. And there's always a drive in my heart to say, what can we do to be peacemakers? How can we speak peace and love over violence and hatred? And those are, in many senses, I have to tell you, those feel idealistic in some ways, because for the vast majority of us, those aren't direct touch points. You know, they're people, they're our neighbors, they're in other places. We need to be concerned. We need to be mindful of what actions we can take, but it feels like there's sort of this like distance between us that makes that a different sort of reality than the reality that I'm filming this, and I can literally look out my window and see Herndon High School, a place where thousands of students gather every day to learn, to grow, and to become. Herndon High School is fed by a middle school that's not too far away from us. It's maybe a mile or so, and that middle school is fed by 6 elementary schools here in our community. I think the tragedy of the events in Uvalde is yes, this massive loss of life and in many degrees a loss of innocence, but it's also this space of wondering, could it happen here? This painful realization that this morning, I sent my wife to go teach. She's at an area high school right now, leading a classroom and trying to navigate and figure out, what does it look like for me to be me in this space, in the midst of all of my own questions and doubts and fears. I want to come and lead this Real Talk space in this way today, not to have this be just a desperately hopeless kind of perspective. I think it's important for us to recognize as the church and as people called Christians that if we're going to be real, there are very real challenges in our world, in our lives, and things that we need to be able to speak to, probably more importantly, that we need to be able to listen to and hold. And I think it's important to recognize and be cognizant of the reality that today's heavy. There's a great weight in our world today, especially in our country, especially surrounding our schools. And it's in moments like these that it becomes ever more apparent to me why it was so essential for God to send Jesus to this world, because we needed a Jesus who was fully divine, and we needed a Jesus who was fully human. I was meeting with some leaders this week, and we were reading from the Gospel of Mark, the 4th chapter, the end of the 4th chapter, and there's this scene where Jesus calls all these people together to get on boats and to cross a lake. And so they all get on the boat, and Jesus and his friends are on one of the boats, and as they sail out onto the lake, everything goes awry. The winds are pounding the boat. the Bible describes as this like gale force situation where there's wind and wave, and all of Jesus's friends are on this boat saying, what in the heck is going on? How are we going to make it through all of this? And they go to find Jesus, and there's this kind of famous thing that happens where Jesus is in like a back room of the boat asleep. And the disciples are like, what's up with this? Like you're sleeping through this. Like, how could you be asleep in a moment like this? Don't you care about us? Don't you see what's happening here? Like everything around us is crashing in, and it feels like so much. And Jesus calmly gets up from that space. And rather than being reactive, he goes out into the outer area of the boat, and he says 3 words: silence, be still. Silence, be still. And it's like in a snap, the wind's calm and the waves subside. And the disciples have this like wonderment of, well, who is this that even the winds and the waves obey him? I think about this because so much of what I feel right now is that the way that life is going in our country and our world feels very windy, feels very wavy. It feels like we're on a boat that has not found its steadiness, and it's being tossed to and from every news cycle, everything on social media. It all feels like topsy-turvy and all over the place. And amidst all of that worry, and amidst all of that just rage of what surrounds us, I think it's very easy, and we would be forgiven if it felt like God was asleep at the wheel. Like, God, why didn't you intervene in Texas? God, why did you not do something about this thing or that thing? God, can you smack some sense into some people? And yet, what's so poignant about the Mark 4 story is that Jesus, even though his reaction is not what the disciples desire, Jesus is present with them in the storm. And the way that Jesus handles the storm is not to panic. It's not to go through this wild exercise of joining the disciples in their fret. It's to calmly get up and to speak truth. Silence. Be still. You know, one of the things that I think, if we're looking for how do we respond in a moment like this, there are an awful lot of words that we can say. I've got a community letter that's going to go out later this morning, and you know, I'm sure there'll be many other words that are shared, and hopefully some of those will be meaningful. But I think it's okay to sit in the silence. I think it's okay to be still. Because in the silence and in the stillness, there's this radical awakening that can take place in our souls. And it's an awakening that can remind us that we are not alone on this journey. I want to be very clear here. Silence and stillness are not invitations to repetitive inaction. I think there are ways that we as people of faith, that we as the church can respond to help create a more whole community, a more whole world. And I'm sure we'll be exploring and navigating and discerning what that would look like in the coming days and weeks. But before we rush into saying the right thing first, or saying whatever we need to first, maybe we would do well to see Jesus taking a nap. not absent from our chaos, but fully present and fully unbothered in it. And notice that Jesus doesn't stay on the bed. In Jesus' time, he gets up. In Jesus' time, he speaks words of truth and activity. In Jesus' time, the winds and the waves subside. My hope and my prayer for you and for us today is that we might trust in those spaces of stillness and solitude. That we might recognize that when we occupy those spaces, we're never alone in them. And that amidst the chaos and the grief of all that is transpiring around us, God is still there. God is weeping with us. God is holding us tight. And I believe God is calling us to listen well, to receive story, to share life, and to believe that the work of God amongst us people is not yet finished. May we live into that today and every day. God bless you, my friends. Be well. Please reach out to our church office at herndonumc.org if you need to talk, if you need to pray, if you need just a space to know that you're not alone. That's why I'm here. That's why we're here, is to discover that even in the hardest moments of this life, very truly, God is with us. I thank God for you. Be well. I'll see you soon.